Thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate you, brother. So, first and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're safe, you're practicing social distancing, and our hearts are heavy tonight. This is a critical conversation, and I am emboldened because of the names of the individuals who are with us this evening. And it's interesting, it's timely and serendipitous. And one good aspect of leadership is not a spectator sport, but also as a leader, you learn how to get out of your own way. So the heavy lifting is going to be provided by Ravi and Evelyn, but I have some brief opening remarks I wanted to share with you. Number one, I'm going to start you with two quotations, one from Desmond Tutu. He said, "A person is a person because he or she recognizes others as persons." We have seen some horrific, absolutely marginalized, just really heinous events happen over the last number of years, in particular, a week ago. And we're really hurting right now. And we want to come up with some solutions. And last week, it was interesting and serendipitous because I finished teaching a course on organizational change. And what I want you to think about as we have this conversation today with Ravi and Evelyn and with Rivka and Dan is what role can you play? Can you be a change initiator, a change implementer, a change facilitator? Can you be a change recipient? You are, because we all are on MSNBC, we're on Fox, we're on CNN, whatever your stream is, NPR, you're hearing and you're seeing what's happening around you. We're all affected by it. And a number of folks have said we're in the middle of COVID-19 and racism 2020. And we all have something to really think about. Truth to power is what are you willing to do? Now, this is another authorism, and I didn't talk about this one last Tuesday when I talked about conflict. But my definition of power, which I really want to have us galvanize, because we've seen a bunch of lawlessness where, and we want to be able to exercise our First Amendment rights. We understand that. But we are a self inflicted wound when we're destroying the very businesses that are providing service to our communities. It's a competitive disadvantage. So I think some of the images we've seen in the last 72 or 96 hours have been very, very powerful. And those images have police officers kneeling with community residents. And what I want to say to you is, and I want you to all do a deeper dive. There's a report I want you to be mindful of. 5 years ago, Dan and I and Evelyn, Charles Humphrey, and Onita Coward Mears and some others convened a town hall meeting, and that was in 2015. It was the same year, and this is not political, it's factual, it was the same year that President Barack Obama had commissioned through an executive order the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing. Now, it's a 116-page report, but I think if you look at that document, you will see some major undertakings and alterations. Robbie's going to talk about pivoting. You will see in that document there are three tiers of stakeholders that are important. Number one, local government, which includes municipalities, county, city, and state governments, and what their role is. And there are five outcomes that come out of that. Number two, there is the aspect of law enforcement, and there are five strong deliverables that come out of that. And then number three, it's communities. What can communities do? And that's all of us as stakeholders. So the other quotation I wanted to share with you is Helen Keller. And it's really important that we think about her challenge in terms of conflict. She was visually and hearing impaired. She said, "I long to accomplish a great and noble task, but it is my chief duty to accomplish smaller tasks as if they were great and noble." So as you think about events that are evolving around us, what can you do to play one of those change roles I articulated? And here's what I think. This is just my thoughts. When I graduated from law school, my first job, I was assigned to the Queens District Attorney's Office as a prosecutor. And one of the aspects of my lens and my perception since then have been this, is that it's important for us to think about, as we think about pivoting and changing the narrative of this system that hasn't worked, where we see images and see right before our eyes how George Floyd's life was taken away from him, we need to think about going forward. This is my suggestion. And I know we have these civilian complaint review boards around the country, but I want to say this very poignantly and very powerfully. We need to have a mechanism in place, ladies and gentlemen, where we have, as we're vetting and some folks that are on this call are in the HR arena. All right. Evelyn and I, HR practitioners as well. We need to be involved with the talent acquisition, the talent management, the onboarding of police officers so that we're sitting at the table as community stakeholders so that they understand implicit bias, managing conflict, micro inequities, micro triggers, emotional intelligence, all those aspects. And here's the thing, if you look at this report, the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing, you will see that the goal, and it's ambitious, the goal is that every police department in America, imagine if we had uniformity where all police departments were using community residents who have a vested interest to vet those individuals who would become our next police officer. All right, and that's all I wanted to say. And here's the thing, and we heard today, and this is important, that Attorney General Ellison was appointed as the special prosecutor to oversee this process. Now, that is very significant historically. He is the first Muslim ever to be elected to statewide elected office. The task he has is enormous. It's critically important that we support him. Now, if we lose confidence going forward in those individuals who are appointed special prosecutors, my suggestion is that we have an independent body like the U.S., if you will, Civil Rights Commission, and have other human rights groups because we have lost confidence. One of the first aspects of that report that I'm referring to, that 116-page report, is the first word is trust. And our trust has been violated, has been marginalized, and we need to do a better job. So without further ado, let me introduce our co-facilitators, and I am absolutely humbled to do this. Two colleagues who are in the space. They are disruptors in many ways. Let me introduce first Ravi Patinsing. Ravi's a keynote and cultural catalyst. He does keynote speakers around the world. Right now, he's in Chile. He has strong DNA talking about legacy leadership. And you can do your own research about Ravi's background. No pressure for him. He's also a cultural diplomat with the U.S. Department of State. He has also a background in music. Back in the late 90s, the actual group that he was with was Hanson, and they were nominated for 3 Grammy Awards. He spearheads programs globally, K through 12. He works for corporations, NGOs, and other organizations. Let's give a nice round of applause to Ravi, one of our co-facilitators. And then the next co-facilitator is Evelyn Sukhiya Mathews. She is a civil and human rights transformationalist. She's an empowering leader, a keynote speaker around the world. She has done programs not only domestically, but also in Panama. She's done programs in Bermuda, and also accompanied me to China last July. She was very much in a household where activism was a part of the DNA. She's one of 9. Her father, for those of you that know old school, and we celebrated, of course, a number of years ago, the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act, where her dad was a street speaker in Harlem back in the 50s and 60s. So no pressure for Evelyn. She's got corporate experience, not only as a business executive, but also as a media and arbitrator, like some of our colleagues like Jacqueline and Stephanie who are on the webinar tonight. And she's the president and CEO of ConsciousTrainers.com, where she provides best-in-class solutions to organizations. So I introduce you to Ravi and Evelyn, and they'll take it from here. Ravi, Evelyn.
Okay, I think I'm going to start because Ravi and I had a lovely conversation today, and we're just so excited about being here with you and Dan and Rivka and Arthur. I know each of you that are on this call. Many of you I know. Those that I don't know, I know that you are definitely important because you're on this call. You're on this call for a reason, because you feel that this is an important issue like all of us. And that's why, even though this was set up yesterday, that means we was involved and jumped right on this because each of us have a passion for this. We feel this civil disobedience. Some people might feel that this is lawlessness, but we feel that this is something that's important at this time for us to dive into, to take care of, especially since this issue that the folks are walking for, risking their lives for, is something that was established over 400 years ago. So it's very, very important to us to be a part of this and that you are here so that we can try to have a wonderful discussion, but really have talk, come up with some solutions. Again, not as all going to happen today, but it's going to be a start of the conversation. So, Rob, if you have something that you'd like to add, or if we're going to get to the first question,
No,
or
just
go right ahead.
thanks, Evelyn. Just want to say hello to everybody and echo everything that Evelyn just said. It really is so important that we can all engage in a discussion like this. You know, as I was thinking about this, because none of us had much time to prepare, but it is part of what we talk about a lot. So, um, you know, each of us as individuals can make a difference, but together we really can create change. And I think that's one of the differences. And it's so important that we recognize that we have that opportunity to do something as individual. But if we really unite, and that's why I brand myself as Ravi Unites, because it's so important to bring people together in order to create real change. And so I think this opportunity here tonight is not just about listening to Evelyn and me speak, but it's also about giving all of you a voice. Because as I always tell my audiences is that if I don't listen to my audience and learn from my audience, then I'm useless. Because that's how I learn. And it really is about all of us talking to each other and coming up with solutions. We're not going to change the world tonight necessarily, but we can start. We can certainly put us on the path to making sure that that happens. So that's sort of the mindset that I'm approaching this conversation with. I hope you all join me in that mindset, because we can, absolutely can, make a difference. We can create change. And as Gandhi taught us, be the change you wish to see in the world.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Robbie. That's excellent. Thank you, Arthur. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Rivka. So we have our first question. And what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to start our discussion between Rob and myself. But then what we're going to do is vote on you. It'll be in the chat box, adding your comments, adding your thoughts, so that before we send you off to be in your individual sessions, we're going to vote on the topics that we want to talk about this evening. We'll talk more about that in a moment. So if you're ready, which I know you are, because I'm looking at your faces and your body language is saying that I'm ready. I have been ready for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and 50 years, because we need a change, as Robbie stated. We need a change. I was raised from a woman that was on the change and didn't know she was having me. But it's all good. So I'm a child from change. And I do, some people are applauding, saying, yes, indeed. And so I'm appreciating that. And this is just in the midst, again, of this pandemic and what's going on. This conversation is going to be great. So, Robbie, here you go. So how do you feel about the current situation? And what do you see as the main issues?
Well, I think we're in a really unique time in the world right now, because the COVID-19 has united us all with one big problem. And that's an interesting position where the entire world is actually focused on something together. And then when you have these other events and like what we're dealing with right now, currently in the United States, it gives us an opportunity to work together on them, because we are all connected through something else. So, you know, I think the big issues, obviously, that we're all talking about right now are social injustice, and that's we're more focused on racism in the United States right now, but that's part of social injustice. I mean, we have it in racism, we have it in classism, we have it in religious differences, we have it in sexual identity and sexual preference. And the point is, we're all on this planet together. We are sharing in this planet. We are sharing in COVID-19. That's why I brought that up, because we are all sharing in something that doesn't discriminate. And that puts us all on the same page for something. And I think we can unite and get over a lot of our social injustices if we, as you know, what are components that go into social injustice? Implicit bias. We all have to learn to recognize our own implicit bias. That doesn't mean we have to defeat our implicit bias, because that's part of human nature. But if we can recognize it, then we can help make sure that it doesn't interfere with the way that we act towards each other. That's a really important aspect. And I think that works in a socioeconomic capacity as well. We all have to remember that it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor. There are many things that we have in common. And our lenses may be different, but we can help each other. So social injustice, cultural competence, those are one big issue. Another issue is privilege. We're hearing it. We know that privilege is something that divides us in many ways, but it can also be something that unites us. I don't want to make anyone feel ashamed for their privilege. It's not something that I think people should be made to feel ashamed of. We should inspire them to use it for good. I was given a keynote once, and I didn't talk about my family background or anything, but it was in the bio of the conference where I was speaking. And an older African-American woman comes up to me afterwards in the receiving line, and she puts her hand on my hand, and she says, Gandhi, Mandela, Martin Luther King, they all came from privilege. She said, don't be ashamed of your privilege. Just use it for good. And I think that's something that through our educational systems that we have to inspire our privileged youth. Use their privilege from good. Not shame them for it, but use it. So that's one of the other big issues, is to sort of redefine what we think of privilege and its role and its potential role in defeating what I talked about earlier, social injustice. And then we talked about violence. Arthur talked about that, and obviously violence is a big issue. And you just look at social media, and there are people there that are saying, go for it, go riot. And then there are other people that are saying, absolutely not, violence doesn't solve the problem. So we have to come together and decide really what role violence has in some of this, because none of us believe that violence is good. We would all rather see peaceful protests. But you know what? Not a lot of changes necessarily come from peaceful protest. A lot more changes are forced through violence. I'm not by any means justifying or promoting violence, but here's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we need to make sure that those who have the resources, that those who have the voice, understand that they also have the social responsibility to prevent the violence. It's not about containing violence, it's about preventing violence.
Just along our coastline to be near 80 degrees tomorrow.
So that's another issue. So my three issues that I think are really important that are coming to surface here are social injustice, privilege, and violence. And that's where I'd like to see us go in some of the discussions to see what those solutions are. You know, education's a big deal too, but as I always say, education is the solution to all the world's problems. So I don't see education as the issue. I see it as the solution. How about you, Evelyn? What are yours?
Well, listen, I was just checking my boxes as you were speaking, saying, okay, I don't have to have that discussion. But yes, I definitely, along with the education, I think the unemployment is definitely crucial to this conversation, because when we talk about violence and lawlessness, a lot of that stems from unemployment and the inequality of our economic system that we have in our country. So that is definitely something we need to do about that. And of course, the continued persecution of individuals, but we also need to discuss when we talk about the medical. So we also have the medical differences, and that is definitely not a system too that is equal, because with the medical system as it's set up, it doesn't really help people of color, regardless of the money that you have or the education level that you have. So that's another area, like some of the things that are aligned against us or built on top of us, or the bricks that are placed on top of us, is things that are your economics. But even if you rise out of that and you are with prosperous, you can go to the hospital, you could be having a baby, and you will not walk out that hospital. So the economics does not matter, but the medical part does matter, because I also think this is a thought process that's, when we talk about institutional racism, we have to understand this is something that's embedded in our history. This is something that allows individuals to feel that regardless of where you've made it in life, or that you have the money, you have the education, you know, the prosperity, you can own your company or anything like that, it really doesn't matter, because you're always continuously fighting. And so I think we need to think about that, as well as the historical inaccuracies. And when I say the historical inaccuracies, or the complete denial of the participation of African Americans, folks that are brown, Native Americans are missing from history. And when you have those missing from the history books, it's kind of like you've just been sitting here doing nothing. And so therefore you're treated as a nothing because you didn't contribute to the building of this great country. And so when we have to change the history fact, the historical facts need to be readjusted in a big way. And when you do try to promote history, like the 1619 report that just came out, when you try to promote these types of things and not just promote them because they are based on history, the facts are there, then it's something that's fake, which makes it very difficult for us to have an appreciation for people of color and their contributions to this country. So though that's something else that is a very important part of the continual persecution that we have going on with whether it's the government, whether it's local, whether it's federal, whether it's the police, whether it's the educational system, whether it's the teachers or the people in the community. Um, this is what we are working with that is something that we need to look at. So again, this is not what we're going to be able to resolve because again, it's been going on for 400 years, but it needs to begin to be dismantled and quickly. And something that I was listening to today with a doctor from Harvard University, and this is something else when we talk about the healthcare system and why, like with this coronavirus, we are only um, like 18% of the population. However, when it comes to the COVID virus, we're leading that category for deaths. And the same for the Hispanics. And then the Native American brothers and sisters. They have 3 states, and there is so high in the coronavirus. So again, they're saying too, when you have an issue like persecution, and what people are marching for today, when you have that issue because someone was killed, especially a Black male without a gun, they're saying that it raises your chances of getting a debilitary illness and also to have psychological damage for at least 3 months. So we have to think about that in terms of how many killings are there a year, and there are 60 killings per year for African Americans, mostly men, but then there are women in there as well. But every time someone is killed in our community around the country, and if you know about it, African Americans grieve for that, regardless of the community that it is. If they did not have a weapon, our grief lasts for years, and it affects us, and it also has the opportunity, it's not only because it's an opportunity, it's catastrophic for us that we start having high blood pressure, hypertension, cardio issues, respiratory issues. So this is a study that was been going on, and it was just released that from Harvard Medical School that this is what happens to us. That's why this topic, among everything else, is so important for us to engage in solutions, so that when we talk about lawlessness as well, and all the young people that are protesting, it does make you proud. All those millennials out there. And I said to Danny, oh, it is funny. 5 years ago, I was in New York with Arthur and my husband. So they met me on, I forget the street. I met them there, and we said hello. And I said, okay, I have my sneakers because again, at that time we was dealing with Eric Gardner situation. And I was going to protest. And I said to them, I'm just looking for where the protest is here in Manhattan, and I'm going to that. So I mentioned that I did not go. I was a little late in meeting where I needed to go. So I just said to Danny today that I need to get out there to protest. And Danny had the nerve to tell me, you're too old for that. We are all too old for that right now. So we have to find other ways to do this. And he said, that's why you're doing this tonight. And I said, so I got to put my sneakers away again? So again, yes, those millennials are picking up the mantle. And what's so fabulous about this is the millennials are all races, ethnicities, genders. that are out there walking. And that should make us all proud. And
Yes.
again, as Arthur said this day, with the police officers, the captains around the country, the chiefs around the country, and the chief that fired those 4 police officers, it's been a long time coming, but change is upon us. And
Right.
we have to look at each of those little things that are given because they are small
Right.
and realize from that, with us joining together, we will be making a difference. So that's all I'm going to say for now in terms of what I think of the issue, because I think Ravi and Arthur, you stated many things that I wanted to say, but I wanted to just pick up on these last year's issues that I think it's important for us to be out there. So Ravi,
Good.
go ahead.
Now it's
Bosh.
7:31. Let's do a time check.
Mhm.
And here's the thing. I know you both have a question each. So if you can kind of limit your comments to 2 minutes each so that we can give a chance to get the folks in the breakout room. They can have some cohort kind of small group conversation. So Robbie, go ahead. You have the floor.
Yeah, I think, we're going to talk a little bit about, just to give the group here some ideas of things that they can do. Some of the things that we're trying to do ourselves out in the world. And a lot of my audiences are educators. And one of the things, the programs that I started back in 2018, and it was based on something I did many years before that, was to have young people, classrooms around the world, just get together online for 45 minutes. One classroom in India, one classroom in the middle of the United States, one classroom in Chile, one in Japan, and just have these kids, junior high school, middle school, even older elementary school kids talk. They can create their own questions. We set it up in advance. And you know what we do? We use Skype. We use Zoom. We use things that every single teacher in every single classroom of the world pretty much has in their pockets already. All they got to do is make that available to their students. And you'd be amazed what would happen. The first time I did it, I scripted a 30-minute dialogue between poor kids in India and rich kids in the United States. And I was convinced that they weren't going to have anything to talk about. Well, you know what? 10 minutes into it, they were off my script. 90 minutes later, they were still talking. When they didn't have anything left to talk about, they started showing each other dance moves. And I couldn't believe it because the whole thing ended with the kids in India beatboxing and the girls in Los Angeles dancing in real time. And I have to tell you, I did a press conference right afterwards, and I was so moved by it. And I just said, I don't know, if we could get young Israelis and young Palestinians to do this before we teach them how to hate each other, maybe world peace is possible. And I believe that if we start young and if we start with schools and we create this mindset of cultural competence, make it organic. As I always say, I didn't do anything. I just created the opportunity. The kids did the magic because it's organic. And if we let people do that and become culturally competent, another thing I often tell my audiences is we don't have to teach cultural competency. We have to unteach cultural incompetency because these kids are natural. They are natural. And so that's really the kind of things that I would love to see all of us thinking about, because we can implement these things. And another very just quick example is that my background is in music. So I create songwriting camps all around the world for people from traditionally opposed cultures and religions to get together for 2 weeks and create music. I had Christians, Muslims, and Buddhists writing songs together for 2 weeks in Indonesia, and they became best friends in the process. I went to Iraq and did it with Iraqis and Kurds. I went to Lebanon, did it with Syrians and Lebanese. And here in Chile, I'm doing it with the indigenous tribes and the non-indigenous, because that is the power of arts. And we all have access to use arts to foster empathy, to create world peace. And with that, if anybody doubts world peace is possible, I want to talk further because I want to convince you that it is absolutely possible.
Absolutely. So
Excellent.
Robbie,
Thank you.
awesome. Evelyn, I have one question, and I didn't mention this by design in your introduction, but if you can take 2 minutes and then we'll go to our breakout rooms. You have a very unique perspective like Robbie does. His is obviously global, domestic, but also being a cultural ambassador through music and through his work. Evelyn, you were a police officer. A lot of folks that may not know you don't know this about you. Could you just talk for a minute or two about your lens and your optics about what happened to George Floyd last week, just very briefly, because you have a unique perspective. Your line of sight about this is really unique. So just for 2 minutes, Evelyn, if you can just talk about that.
Okay. Well, I know people always talk, believe that there's a blue line of silence. There is and there isn't. It just depends on which side are you on and who you are. I think what happened last week, when I saw that, I was immediately, as you don't know the ending, as you're watching the video for the first time, you just see the officer there. But I was enraged with him who had the knee, but I was even more enraged when I saw the other officer standing in the street. Just, it seemed like, are you directing traffic? And he was just looking around. And I viewed as an author's then I'm screaming. And I'm like, are you going to get in there and pull him off? Are you going to tell him it's enough and let's pick him up and put him in the car? I have been there. Give me a moment. I have been there in situations like that and had to jump in. And so they were saying too that maybe he was running. And so sometimes people think that way too. You're running, you must be guilty. And also as the police mentality, when people run and when they catch you, it is well known fact that that's when you get a severe beating. I have chased many people. I've run for many blocks. I have climbed rooftops and jumped over it and all of that stuff. But when the cuffs are on, the arrest is over and they go into the vehicle, unlike someone else who says just knock their heads and all of that. So you saw complacency, you saw affirmation from all the officers that was there. For it could be a couple of reasons why they did not intervene, just fair. And officers also have fear to intervene because it's like, am I going to be the only one that's not going to step up to the plate on this one? It takes courage to be able to step up to the plate when everyone else is engaging in behavior that's incorrect, that is lawless, behavior that's going to harm the other human being you're supposed to be arresting. If you don't step up, you have to be able to have inside of you something that push you forward to make it stop. It has to be locked in your mind and in your heart to not see that other person suffer like that. And those officers, yes, I do agree that they assisted in George's death, definitely, and they're party to it. And so the culture, when people talk about the culture, there's many cultures that are in the police department. One thing that's important is that it's a challenge for people of color to be police officers. It is a challenge. It was a challenge for me. I was the only one in my department where I work, a person of color and woman, and I was different and I was not from that area, educated, and I had different views about life and people and justice for all. So I had my challenges and disciplinary issues because I would speak up. But that was me, and that's how I was raised. I was raised, when I first opened up my mouth to say anything, I was a quiet child. But the first time I opened up my mouth was a teacher spanking a student with a ruler. Remember way back when, with a ruler with a rubber band, religious, spanking them. And I spoke up and said, you cannot do that. That is wrong. She has a nosebleed. And I spoke up on that. And I was in the principal's office, and my mother ended up coming and saying, okay, what happened? I don't want to the principal. I don't want to hear from you. I want to hear from my daughter because she never talks. And I said, Mommy, you told me to always look out for our people, other people, to stand up for them no matter what they look like. Well, I did that. My mother said to me, well, honey, I'm so proud of you. You finally found your voice. I have not lost my voice. I might sometimes lose it for me, but I never lose it for another. So for me as a police officer, we have to have officers that have a voice, but a voice for righteousness.
Right.
Righteousness and being there for another human being and not allowing that behavior to take place. And we'll talk about that later. This is where training comes in and instilling respect for another human being and not having fear, losing that fear to not say nothing. So the blue wall, it exists, but my wall is humanity. It does not
Awesome.
exist for me.
If you see something, say something.
You
All
got
right.
that
So
right.
Rivka, we're going to put folks, and here's your charge, folks, in the breakout rooms. And this is very informal. What we like to do, you'll probably be in a breakout room with 500 individuals. And what we like you to do during the 10-minute period is just come out with one learning outcome or one to do or one action item that resonated for you as a group. All right. So if there are 5 of you, everybody should have a chance to talk for about a minute what they're feeling. We want to validate your feelings. We want to make sure we embolden you. We enable you to say what's on your mind. Everybody needs to have a voice. That's really important to us. So we're going to put you, we have 7:40. We're going to put you in breakout rooms for about 10 minutes. Rivka, you ready to do that?
Oh, and just before you do that, Riff, one other thing that Ravi and I thought was important with Danny is that, folks, try to come up with, the thing that you want to come up with is something that we can move forward with that you think will make a difference for the situation that is going on now. What should be done? And we want to
Action
look at
item.
everybody. What can we do as they move forward? What do you think should be done? Each
All
group.
right. I'm going to put you all in your breakout rooms. You'll unmute and make sure you, if you can, have your video on for those discussions. And if you can't figure out how to leave the room, it's okay. When the time comes, it will automatically put you back in this main room. So I'm going to send you all
And
there.
folks, remember, it's not a dissertation or a thesis. Just as Evelyn said, one action item that you can all agree on. But make sure you validate your emotions that you're feeling right now.
Hi, Denise.
Hi, babe. How you doing?
Here's your mom.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
This is a party. This is like a party.
Yes, yes,
Millennial. That's one of those millennials.
yes.
Did we talk about that, Denise?
Yes. Yes, we did.
Oh my
We spoke about the millennials. Yes, we did.
What did you conclude about the millennials?
They're awesome. My daughter's a Syracuse grad 3 weeks ago. She's
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes,
Thanks.
She
Yes.
represents them well.
yes.
And we
And
Oh my God.
they're assisting us with the collective voices, and that's what we need.
Right.
Yeah.
We really need it. We almost over.
One of the great things about that generation, I often say that, this is a generation that grew up with Obama, and
Yes.
But the thing is, what's really great about that generation is that they're not impressed that we had an African American president. They think it's normal. And
That's right.
progress.
Right.
And that's progress.
Right.
So it's that organic nature of that
Mhm.
generation that we can foster and embrace. And, now they come to the fight probably with some anger, but with a lot of idealism. And we need
Yes.
idealism in the world because idealism provides the vision.
Definitely. Definitely.
And I think they take it more passionately because the majority of them don't see color. They're not prejudiced. They love each other. They just, hey, that's if they don't like you, they just don't like you because you're a jerk or you're this or you're that. They don't see color. They don't care about color. They don't even care about gender. And so they're so strong and so passionate. Like, what the hell is this? And I don't want to live in a world like this. So I'm just ever so proud of them and their energy and their spirit. And, we just need love and communication in this world. It's just lacking it. So.
Yes.
And the thing about the
I was just gonna
millennials.
say the big thing is to harness that. We don't want to taint their idealism. We don't want to
Exactly.
make them
Nope.
negative about it because
Nope.
that can happen. And if we do that, then we just end up perpetuating the same problems. So really a way to keep it positive and to learn from them is something that we could all benefit from.
Yeah.
They also have understanding for one another. And the rest of us, we're good folks because folks, I've seen all ages out there yesterday. You saw the senator from which there was 22 states that were having these marches. And so I forget the state that she was from. She got pepper sprayed.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's Diana Richardson from Brooklyn.
Yeah, she got pepper sprayed, and she's like, "Wait a minute!" And they were helping her. She couldn't see. They escorted her to the side, but she was trying to talk to the officer, and then she kind of like jumped in it because a person fell off the sidewalk and into the street, and the police jumped on the person, unfortunately, and she jumped in there. So that's the whole thing. We have everyone involved in it. Someone had a question, and Danny, I think it's good that you can answer this because I think you said that you were doing something for a voter registration.
Yes.
Someone had a question about that. How do we get the young people to register?
Evelyn
think
and
Jacqueline
Robbie,
asked
are we
that.
back? Are we back from our
Yes.
breakout rooms?
Yes, we're all in.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So Jacqueline asked that question. Danny, I thought you were doing a campaign on registering folks.
Yeah, we're about to, we have a website. I'll put up the website right here. It's flowbellangels.org. and it was started to help seniors and those who love them uh, thrive and survive during the pandemic. And our next project, we put up resources in every state that could help seniors and those who love them. And our next project is to put up all the information for all 50 states about how to register to vote, how to vote by mail, what the difference is between absentee voting and voting by mail. And each state is different. So we need to put up all the information. For example, the deadline to vote, to request an absentee ballot in New York State for the primary, which is June 23rd, was this past Friday. So if you didn't request your absentee ballot by then, it's too late. I have my absentee ballot right here, so I could vote by mail. And there is information about what boxes to check. In certain states, you have to check that you have a medical reason or disability because you're afraid of COVID-19. So each state is different. So we want to put up a resource directory so that everybody could know about it, first of all. Also, to debunk the myths. Some of the myths are that it's subject to fraud because you can give somebody your ballot to mail for you and they can mail some other ballot. So, but the studies have shown that these are myths and they're not reality, that it will increase voter participation. It'll make it more accessible for seniors. In certain states, if you're over 65, you could automatically vote by mail. And that's how it should be. It should be that everybody should vote by mail given the current pandemic. But there's going to be a lot of pushback. So check that website, join our mailing list at flowbellangels.org, and we'll send you the information. And if you want to volunteer to help us create the resources for the voting by mail in every state, we welcome volunteers. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. And
Hey,
so,
Dan.
Yes.
Real quick, Evelyn. Yeah, could you tell folks, I'm not sure if we established a real construct for Florence Belsky. If you can just tell them in 2 minutes, and then I guess we need to try to, I know we're going to run over, just tell them a little bit about Florence Belsky in terms of her body of work and what she contributed to society and why that was the impetus for you and Charlotte to, spearhead or launch the non-for-profit organization.
Okay, thank you, Arthur. Just want to say everybody, all the facilitators have agreed to stay for an extra half an hour if anybody wants to stay or can stay. Those who can't, we will make a edited version of the video. We'll post it on flowbellangels.org within the next 2 weeks or so you can see it there. And we're also going to hopefully do a follow-up webinar if everybody's interested in a couple of weeks, and see what happens and see how we could protect current prosecution by Keith Ellison, who's recently been appointed, as Arthur mentioned. But Florence was the founder of the foundation. She was a pioneer woman attorney. She went to Hunter College in New York City, first person in her family to go to college. She went to Brooklyn Law School. She was one of 2 women in the class at Brooklyn Law School. And she was a labor lawyer during World War II. And she went into initially private practice and then worked for the government, the court system, as a special referee in New York County. And she was my mentor. She taught me a lot. She was good friends with my dad, who was a lawyer. We used to have great lunches every week and learned a lot over lunch. She also introduced me to my wife, bless you, who Florence was a great networker, and she used to have these salons and would have all these interesting people from all around the world, many of whom are now on the advisory board. But Florence introduced me to my wife, Charlotte Fall, at one of those salons, and we became colleagues and partners, and not only in life but in law. And so we owe a lot to Florence, and we wanted to continue her legacy because Florence taught me at least, that the way to stay young is to surround yourself with younger people and stay relevant. So part of our mission is to connect people so they could share information and empower each generation to teach the others. So intergenerational mentoring. So, to surround yourself with Gen Z and millennials and Gen X, and them to surround themselves with baby boomers and beyond, because everybody has something to contribute. And so that's who Florence was. She was a great networker. She was a great mentor to many. And we're blessed to have her still here today. She was the impetus of this. And thank you, Arthur, and thank you, Ravi, and thank you, Evelyn, and thank you all for coming.
Okay, thank you, Danny. Was a question that came up, so we want to get, before we end, let's see if we can get what you came up with from each of your breakout groups. You're going to just come up with 1 or 2 items, and then we want to hold that together. And I know for some individuals, it did come up that you're just now, you might have been watching all these protests prior to this one, but this is the awakening. So some people are still studying this, looking at this, trying to figure out what's going on, looking at things on the internet. You got to remember, everything on the internet is not truthful. So you'll hold that in abeyance as well. Check your information that you're viewing in the video as well. So let's just go over with the groups. We're supposed to have one person from maybe each group can just tell us, what did you come up that you thought would be something that's a possibility that maybe we should they should try to initiate so we can have change.
Yeah, an action statement that's brief.
Yeah, so we can just get one, and I think I could start with, since I started with my group, Hannah came up with, when it comes to hiring, we should have some outside folks to be a part of the team. And like community, she thought of HR individuals, and we also added community leaders. So that was one thing for hiring. Let's bring in some outside resources and not just the police that will handle that.
Thank you, Hannah.
Another group?
I'll go for, I was with Denise, and by the way, I'm Stephanie Collier. I am a mediator with FMCS in Dallas, Texas. And in my previous life, I was a staff rep for Communication Workers of America. So I do so appreciate the opportunity to be with you all tonight. It's very empowering.
Well, Stephanie, 6 of your colleagues are on from CWA 1180.
I saw some of them.
Yeah, they're in the house. We have a special relationship with them. Okay.
So one love, y'all. So Denise and I, we were chatting about how she's getting messages from all over the world through social media and Facebook and WhatsApp, and so I told her something that my grandmother used to say: pennies make dollars, because the word change came up, and I thought about the pennies, that small change can make dollars. You can make bigger incremental changes. And so we thought, starting with your own circle, your family, your friends, and changing the narrative, keeping our story out there versus what people are hearing in the media, like taking those small moments to bring people in and just talk about our pain, talk about our grief, but also talk about these action items. And if UCWA folks know, that's kind of organizing 101. You talk to people, find out what is important to them, or let them share their story. It humanizes us and it humanizes them, as we find we can figure things out together in our own little circles.
Excellent. Even within this pandemic, we can still communicate and not know that we are not alone, but we have others with us to assist us with this. So yes, let's have that discussion about how we feeling about all of this stuff to keep us all involved and feeling uplifted. Excellent.
Right, but also, Miss Evelyn, is telling our story, keeping our story out there, not the garbage, not the misinformation, not the hate and divisiveness, but elevating our stories.
Excellent, because that's what's at the heart. We don't want to look at the lawlessness. They're going to handle that. We're going to stop that, and hopefully that's tonight will be stopped, especially since the family of George Floyd spoke today. I don't know if anyone saw that. The brother came from out of town, Houston, I believe, and sat there where he was murdered, at the memorial right there. And they allowed him to be in his moment for 5 minutes or more with his tears and his grief. Everybody knelt beside him and behind him and for a block away was there to give comfort. And then he got up and he spoke. And he said, this is not about lawlessness. This is not about stealing and breaking windows. This is about my brother and my family, because our family are good people and religious people, and we're we're not for any of this. We need
Right.
you to stop. So this is a good thing. So we will continue the story because that's what he said at the end. Continue saying my brother's name and all the others' name. Let's make a change. So excellent. Thank you. What about the next group? Anyone else? Yes.
I'm Deborah.
What's up, Deborah?
Hi, Uncle Aubrey. Anyway, I was in a group with Roy, Chase, and Dan, which was awesome. When we came up with, we need to give people more information, educate them about the history of the black fight, and also we need to protect the process when it was the attorney general, whoever is taking this case off. We need to be able to protect the process so that people don't become disengaged and they, don't like what was going on. Although, the trust have to remain there. Also, we need to call out bigotry when we see it. You need to really call out. If you see something is wrong, you need to be able to step up and say, listen, this is wrong. And the last thing, we need to have more conversations. The conversations might be tough to have, but we need to have those conversations.
Excellent. Excellent. Y'all came out with 4. Conversation is good. Thank you so much. Conversation is painful, but conversation does bring about change. Excellent. And keeps the story out there again. Excellent. Next group. Anyone else? Wait, how many groups did we have, Rivka?
We had 6 or 7 groups. I can't recall. But I think
I know Helen was in my group, and she was going to speak up before about what we talked about. Helen, do you want to?
You're volunteering services?
Helen, that's right. Helen, you're not paying.
You don't have to pay for that.
I saw you wave, so I'm.
Robbie, Helen doesn't need any prompting. Trust me, she doesn't need any prompting. Go ahead, Helen. You got 1 minute.
Oh my, I'm trying to remember what I spoke about. Please remind me, Robbie.
Well, we talked about how important it is, like the others, about having the conversation and where we can be really effective, right, in education and locally.
Yes. Today I was on a call with the same thing, a group of people, and the question was asked, how do you feel about yesterday? And all different ethnicities were on there. And the majority of people stayed silent. So close to the end, I asked, how many people do we have on this call? And they said 35. And I said, well, I didn't hear 35 voices that spoke up about what they experienced, yesterday. I mean, you might be in a town or a county where it's small and you didn't experience any type of looting, but for you to have sat in front of a television and saw this man's life leave his body, your family, your loved ones, and your children to see this, and now to explain this to them, that was an effect that it had on you, and you should have been able to add to the conversation. So we're going to continue this conversation on Thursday because it was a very, very, very heavy conversation. You could hear the pin explode that hit the floor during this session.
Excellent. Very good. Okay, so we got to continue the conversation. And let's not remember, folks, some people are still in pain. Some people are shocked. Some people are suffering PTSD. Some people this is bringing flashbacks. We don't know for something that might have happened to them, someone that they know, and someone, it's just kind of like this virus. They say 1 out of 4 people in America now know someone that has passed. So with this, it could be like that as well. So we just got to hold on to that and support them even when they're quiet. It's A-okay. We'll support you in your quietness. Eventually, we'll get them to open up and talk. Excellent. Thank you. Next. Oh, we have another group that's hanging out there. Where are you? Oh, Hank.
I hope it's okay, Michelle, and then I'll speak up for our group. Our suggestions, we actually had 3 different ones, would probably fall into the category. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, by the way.
Tell them who you are.
Oh, that was really good. That's good, Atlanta.
Yeah.
That was rough last night.
Yeah.
Go on, tell us your list.
We're close. We're hoping we can be a beacon for the rest of the country, but it's going to be a challenge. But anyway, Michelle, Mann, and I spoke, and I think our suggestions might fall in the category of acknowledgement. We talked about book club for adults. Also, I have a friend who's a playwright and a librarian who's put together a catalog of 31 children's books that deal with racism. His name is Calvin Ramsey, and he'll or I'll be glad to share that list.
Please.
And then the third thing, and this is what Nana shares, Nana's in Brooklyn right now, is just the simple acknowledgement of you see somebody, say hello, smile, look them in the eye, which is and we talked about what Robbie's saying, that the small leads to the big, and you said that, Evelyn. So maybe those action items aren't going to rock the world in a big way, but maybe each interaction will be a drip that'll lead to a splash, that'll lead to a tidal wave.
Yes, that's important right now, to be able to look at someone, to say hello. That's that human contact that means a lot to people that we forget sometimes. So that's important. Those books that you're putting together, maybe you should put a list together too for adults. That will help, as the other group stated, we have to keep the history out there, but we want the correct history out there for the people of color in this nation, especially for African Americans, Native Americans too, that have been deprived as well. So that'll be great for that list also to come out, to have something for that as well. Excellent. And we should have one more group.
Hello.
Okay.
Hey.
Hey. This is Gina, and in my group was Yohi from Tokyo and Cheryl.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We were just talking about everything that's going on and what we saw. I mean, we've unfortunately seen a lot of protests here and there, but there's something really different about this particular one after George Floyd.
Yes.
When you look, it's a lot of young people, all different colors. Before there would be protests and it would be one ethnicity and not, but it seems to be really grasping a whole set of people. And we notice that there is a lot of young people. I know people have been talking about the history. Fine, it's great talking about the history so they getting to understand why what's going on. But we were trying to look forward. Since we have so many young people up in uproar, what we're seeing is more than ever, we have to have this conversation with them. How are you going to affect change? You're only going to affect change at the voting booth. So it is that we have to be out there getting people to sign up, making sure that they get to the polls, because we can keep on having this conversation, and unless we put the right people in place to affect the change that we need, so this stops, this unfortunately I foresee will continue another year and another year. It wasn't until I think a couple of days ago, I'm watching CNN or MSNBC, and they had all of the mothers of the past people that passed through this, and it was really eye-opening. You start from Trayvon Martin, and you know it goes back, and it's not like it's many years. We're only talking about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, you know, and it has to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that it can stop is having the right people where we need to affect the change that we need. So that
Absolutely.
is what our group came up in, that is the most important thing that we need to do moving forward.
Thank you, Gina.
Definitely. We got to put our voices out there, make that selection. It's not just the White House, it's on every level. It's even the education board, you know, that we got to get out there and, you know, the folks in our community, we need to get out there and make sure our voice is heard and people are ready. And this change that came about is due to the fact that this is finally one that it woke up everyone's eyes. It woke our eyes up. Helen, yes?
Yes, I have a question. With your expertise, were you an NYPD officer?
No, I was talking to Ravi today, and I was in Portchester, and Harvey goes, oh, he told me some Greenwich. And I said, oh, I'm Portchester. Oh, I know about those bars in there. He's a musician, as he said, I played that. He started naming them all. I was like, you know, we have more bars than any other place in America, right? And you know what that meant?
Well, folks,
You brought me back today, Evelyn. You know?
Oh, so we had a lot of arrests. It was very busy. There's places, and we were saying, communicating, like there's places in New York City that actually don't do anything except chase lost cats. But we were very busy in Portchester, a very busy community, and all that you're speaking about, the pain, to see this, it took me back. As I said, it took me back to my 12 years. It took me back to my frustration of, you know, just
it's all good, Evelyn.
things that you see, and having a voice and making sure that justice comes at 2:00 in the afternoon as well as 2 a.m. in the morning. And this one thing reminded me of this brother. He was dropping someone else, doing someone a favor from Manhattan, and drove them up to Portchester to drop them off. But it was 3 a.m. in the morning, so he got turned around and he was lost. He went up a one-way street. You know, we had a fellow officer who was always one that they said he would arrest his own grandmother. So he got caught up, and he said he was in the alleyway with this person. So I went to back him up because it was my sector. And the brother was out of the car, and they were about to go in, but it didn't take much for the officer. He was one that he has a short fuse for him to get rolling. So I jumped in the middle of it and separated them. And I told the brother, go sit in your car. I walked into his car, have a seat. I said, do you know where you are? It's 3 a.m. There's nobody here but you and him. And I'm happy to come here to back him up. I need you to do me a favor. I need you to go sit in your car. I need you to calm down. And I'm going to go talk to him. Well, I did somebody a favor. And that's the only reason why I'm up here is dog. I don't know where I'm going. I didn't know I was going out of one way. I said, I'm going to need you to be quiet. I understand your frustration, but I'm going to need you to be quiet right now. I don't need the cavalry to get here. The hospital is 2.5 minutes away, and I don't need you to end up there. I need you to just relax. I'm going to help you out. Let me go talk to him and see what's transpiring here and see what we're going to do. So I went to go talk to the other officer, I'm sorry. And so I said, so what happened, so-and-so? He goes, oh, yeah, he did that. I says, he's not from here, as you can see he didn't even get the license or nothing. And I said, he's not from here. He's from Brooklyn, I believe. I said, he's from Brooklyn. He don't know where he's going. He dropped somebody up, or such and such and such. He said, okay, yeah. I said, I just need you to allow him to leave. And let's not have an incident tonight. I said, we got a long night. It's a Friday. And you know how Fridays are. We got many other people. So could we let this man just go home? He's tired. He had a double shift. And he just needs to go home. I said, you know what? I really don't want to hear what you have to say tonight. I'm not in the mood. I just need you to do this, okay? You just need to be calm and let him go. And it actually had a good ending. That was one that had a very good ending. And awesome. It's like that. You just have to, it's hard sometimes. Like, you just got to do things like that. So that's where I was. A place that, don't laugh at me, people. I didn't know nothing about it when I was choosing which department I was going to. I only went to that town one time. The chief asked me, why you want to come here? What do you know about that town? I said, actually, were you ever in this town? I said, I actually went there. Don't laugh when I tell you this. I said, I actually was there for one reason. I came here one time. I went to go to the Furrier. He said, what? I said, well, he said, well, did you buy the coat? I said, actually, no, I bought it from such and such a place, but it was still a lovely town. It was nice. Anyway, I chose to go there. And when I chose that department, my brother told me, who was a detective, he said, that's a very busy place to work.
So Evelyn,
it's very busy.
Gives everybody
it's
context.
Racist.
Portchester was 45 minutes from New York City.
The only place, if you took the Metro North train, and there was an issue on the Metro North train, once it left 42nd Street, there was only 2 places before it got to Stanford where they would help you, and that's what let you tell you. Mount Vernon, New York was one place that they can call the police there and ask for help to help whatever the situation was on a plane, on a train, and the other place was Portchester. and there was many police departments in between, but they would never come to aid them on that train. Those are the only 2 places. So when they had issues, they would call Portchester, and if they didn't get any, if somehow they couldn't call a ride, they couldn't call no place else, because they would have to wait till they got to Greenwich or get up to Stamford.
Sure.
And that was the thing with that. But thank you for asking, Ellen. And but
Right.
it's a challenge. It's a challenge, and so we need you all. Did we get all the groups? I think we're missing one group.
Well, actually, I was in a monologue in group 7 by myself. So I started talking to myself.
You did. You know, I know that was a great conversation you had there.
It was awesome. It was game changing. It was.
I'm sure it was.
Next level. So in the interest of time, it's 7:22. Ravi, do you have?
Oh, wait a minute. We have a hand, Michelle. She's trying to get that hand up. Go ahead.
Okay. And then Val had a comment as well.
Yes. Oh, yes, Val.
Hi. I'll make it quick. I was just piggybacking off of what Evelyn had said. My husband too was an officer, and when he saw this, like all the times, devastated. And we were talking, and he shared the story about how he once, by himself, arrested a 6'2", 300-pound man by himself, with the same energy and conversation that you said. And so we were just talking about how it's the police officers have to be trained to talk with tact and to not allow, our kids are smart. We have smart mouth babies right now. The generation up is like, blah, 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 and they can't react to that. Somebody has to prevail and have a level head. And so one of the things is that you have to talk to people. So once George was cuffed, my husband said, and you know this, Evelyn, once you cuff a man behind his back, we're not talking Lethal Weapon or some TV show, they are rendered powerless.
Yes.
And if they move and you just lift the arm up from just by the cuff, they can't move it, they can't do anything. So sitting on their bodies, pressing your knee on their necks, or treating them in any kind of way other than, like, once you calm them down. Like you said, my husband said, listen, what's going on? Calm down. You need to calm down. I can't help you if you're going to be all crazy, because my partners are going to come. And he worked in a predominantly white town that was highly prejudiced. And so he's like, listen, I got to arrest you. So what are we going to do? You want to fight? I'm 5'8". What are we going to do? Yeah. The only resource I have is to shoot you, and I don't want to shoot you, right? And so he talked him through this arrest. And when the guys got there, they were like, how'd you get that guy in the car? And he's like, well, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, I talked to him, and we're good.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say that thank you. I thank people like yourself and my husband who not only just speak up, because my husband, there's no way that would have went down. Speaking up and not afraid. I swear, I thought my husband would lose his job probably 3 times a week.
Oh, we won't talk about
that. He's that one. We can talk about that. But I wanted to share that.
Yeah, you'll talk about that.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But I just wanted to share that.
Thank you for sharing that.
And you know, it's good. That's you see, it can be done. And people need to understand that. It's just a matter of, when we talked about one thing in our session, I talked earlier, and I think it's important to piggyback on everything that y'all said. It's about to be able to have respect for a fellow human being, even though they're drunk, they're under the influence, they're bad and they're naughty individuals and everything else. And it's also, it's even beyond that a little bit. I think it's having an understanding for another human being, and really understanding, especially when they don't look like you. Because I think that's the issue for a lot of people.
That's
because
the first thing, is to see a human being. That's the first thing.
And you have to be, when you talk about training and re-education, Ravi, we talked about re-education, educating people about other people, because you have people that don't belong in, that have never been to different communities, and they are not familiar with people that don't look like them.
Yeah, so true,
Go ahead, Rob.
No, it's so true. We always tell kids, we bring them up, don't talk to strangers, but we need to teach kids how to talk to strangers.
How to talk.
Yes.
That is something that's really important.
Amen.
The stranger's our friend.
Psychological.
Going to be our friend.
Who said psychological?
That was
I
Helen.
did, because I used to work in the police department. Also, they need to have psychologicals every 3 to 5 years until they retire. That would change a lot.
Every 6 months,
Well,
actually.
you know what?
Okay,
and you know
then.
what? That's true. You know, that's true. It also depends on how. The one thing I will say about police officers, when I first got there.
It's a time check, Evelyn.
Oh, it's time check.
7:26.
Okay, folks. How y'all doing? Are y'all good?
No, Robbie needs to get in here and let him say closing remarks.
Yeah. So
Robbie.
just, with you, Helen, I do agree. Just the last thing, for officers, if they don't do the psychologicals, it is a job like no other.
It is.
It's a job like no other. Unless you've done it, you really have no clue. And a lot of officers, how they sustain themselves is, there was a bar across the street from our precinct, and folks would go and they say, hey, the bar said I wasn't a drinker, and I would never drink my woes away and stuff of that nature. People have to have an outlet. And the thing with officers, when we used to do training with officers to assist them with this as well, is that you have to have friends that's outside of the law enforcement. Many officers have friends. They lose their friends that's outside of law enforcement, and that makes you in a bubble. And that makes you not be able to talk to other regular people. If you keep regular friends, it keeps you civil, it keeps you focused, and it keeps you humane. Because you do see a lot of stuff that makes you have restless nights.
Yes,
and,
yes.
But it's like that. So you need to have some other way to work through that process, which is a good thing. It is a job like no other, though. You see a lot of things. You see the worst of human beings, and you can see the best too. But hope springs eternal for me. And everybody I arrested, I just always talk to them, even though we was taking them to the jail. It's like they would say to me, "Why do you do that?" I said, we might be able to reform. Let people have hope. They have different challenges. So Ravi.
Well,
Closing remarks.
We're coming to an end here, so just want to thank everybody for being part of the conversation, because that's what creates change, is if we're all part of the conversation. And there's a lot of things we talked about, and I think Evelyn or somebody brought up, the importance of school boards. That is a place to make a difference, is to talk to school boards, because in the beginning and in the end, all of this is education that we're talking about. I think it's also important to always remember that education is not just what happens in school. Education starts at home. And it's really important that we talk to our kids, talk to our neighbors' kids, talk to our friends' kids, and be positive adult influences in the lives of a young person. And one of the most important messages that we can also give them in this age of over-information and overstimulation is something I learned when I learned how to fly an airplane, which is data triangulation. You never look at one instrument in order to figure out what your airplane is doing. You look at a minimum of 3. And I believe that if we put data triangulation in everything that we do, then we're going to be a smarter world. And we have to encourage kids to not look at them, and ourselves, to not look at one source, but to look at a minimum of 3 sources before we start forming an opinion on something. And that's where education starts at home. Education's not a schoolhouse, it's a culture. And we need to create a culture of education. Thank you for having me tonight.
Awesome.
So Dan, do you think everyone, y'all gave such good ideas tonight, just follow up on them during the week until we come back together again, that you can say, those that I said we're going to continue the conversation, did you continue the conversation? Did you get someone to sign up to vote? And all the things that we're talking about, we're thinking about protecting the process. Did you get someone to be able to read a book or to talk to them about our history, to be able to keep all of these things on track, what they're seeing on television, depending on what you're watching, why are people doing that? This is not the first time. We've had 60 so far in a year. That's just those that we wasn't viewed on television yet. This one was viewed by everybody. Multiple people broadcasted it. At least 10 people put things up. And this came to a head. We are ready for a change. Robbie spoke about change is the essence for everything. Change is the small thing that adds up. 100 pennies make $1. So each of us are a penny in this world that we are living in. And every time you put your penny with another penny, that's 2 cents. So we're going to all add our 2 cents. And we're going to continue to look at some good things. But just remember, everything is not truthful. When you're not certain, go check it out. See if you can find another source, or go to the persons you're having conversation with, and let's have that discussion. And we won't end. We're going to continue this up because we need to come up with some more fact finding of where we're going to go from here. And plus, we're talking. This is a conversation, but it's an elevation. And it was a pleasure. My partner in crime tonight, Ravi, it was truly a pleasure. You were just awesome, man.
Thank
my
you.
partner,
Great
my
being here
partner.
with you.
Oh,
Just the
and
beginning, Evelyn. Just the beginning. We got more work to do.
This is just the beginning, folks. We
And
got a
Evelyn, I'm
lot
going to
do.
jump in and say one thing, if I can. I talked about truth to power and folks taking on a role as a change initiator, implementer, facilitator, even change resistor. That's part of it. And truth to power. I have a definition of power, and this is copywritten, thanks to my attorney, Dan Schneider. Power. We have the power. P-O-W-E-R. People operating with exceptional resiliency. That's who we are. People operating with exceptional resiliency. All right. Rivka, Dan, we'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, I want to thank everybody, and especially Evelyn, Ravi, Arthur, Rivka, and everybody who came and contributed. This was truly a group effort, and I think that we should do this again. And what we'll do on our part is we will edit the transcript of the video. We'll also produce a transcript. We'll make it available to anybody who wants to access it. If you just email rivka@flowbell.org. We will then decide on another date, maybe in about 60 days, or maybe even 30 days if people want it that much, that quickly. And maybe we could all report back on some of the changes we've initiated, some of the action steps that we've taken, and maybe we could each invite another person or two to the next call, and we could create a tidal wave. And every ripple has an effect. Yes. So let's go out there and use what we learned tonight. Let's amplify it. Let's continue it. And if you have any suggestions, please email us. And we would love to do this again. We really thank you all for participating. These are the type of constructive conversations and dialogues that could move the culture forward. And I think we really do have to protect the process and protect Attorney General Ellison in his prosecution of the perpetrators of this heinous crime. But more important as well is we have to change the culture and change the education system, and that takes a while. So let's keep the conversations going. Thank you all. We'll edit the video for those who want to watch it. We'll put it on flowbell.org, flowbellangels.org, and we will try to have another one of these conversations as soon as possible.
Soon as possible.
Stay safe. Tell everybody in your circle and your family that you love them, because today is all we have. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I'll let Rivka tell you anything else in terms of the housekeeping. And thank you again, Evelyn, Ravi, Arthur, everybody. Thank you all.
Hey, Rivka, just what, before you folks all sign off, look at who's been here. We're calling from all over the world, and look at the different ethnicities that are here. This is beautiful. This is why we're having this conversation, Dan, as you know. We have folks from every place. This has never happened for this conversation. They're protesting in London, Berlin. Look at the places that everybody is standing up for America right now. So when they tell you they're ashamed of us, don't believe that hype. The people are raising things and saying, for America, for Black lives, for the people of America, we could do this. We stand with you. So you're going to hear tonight on television that they're not with us and they think we're stupid. No, they don't. They're proud of us, just like the ones in South Africa said, we overcame apartheid due to the riots in the 60s. We knew that's what we wanted in South Africa because of America. We're doing it again, America. We're doing it again. Look at all of you. You're all different, all ages, all groups, all religions, all ethnicities and races. We got this, people, and genders. Let's stay powerful. Go, Rivka. Take us home, Rivka.
Thank you.
Take us
Thank
home.
you. And thank you all. That was a stunning evening, and we will be recording this so you can review it. And like Dan said, we will put together all of those amazing ideas so that we can have a checklist and we can keep active throughout this time. Thank you so much for coming. We couldn't have had this evening without every single one of you.
Peace.
Thank you, Rivka.
Nice meeting you guys.
Okay,
have a great night.
Good night.